A new quick-forming tropical storm will strike India today. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 19th. So we have Tropical Storm 4B, which is prompting code yellow here at Force 13 operations. The 47th storm to form this year so far, and still in the Eastern Pacific. You can see the trailing remnants of ex-Yvette, which are still out there doing nothing much. In the Atlantic, we've still not marked the area of interest that's gaining traction that the National Hurricane Center have marked as a 40% over the Yucatan Peninsula, so I'm acknowledging its presence now. It is looking not too bad for a land depression. We'll take a look at that shortly. In the Eastern Pacific, we've got no areas of interest there either, just the ex-Yvette remnants there that are once again not doing very much at all, and will probably be taken off our screen by tomorrow's update. In the Western Pacific, we've now marked two areas of interest that have low chances at the moment, 30% for the southern one and 20% for one just to the east of the Ogasawara island chain of Japan. Both of these systems could form, but it's a very uncertain situation right now, if we're being honest. And we've had our fifth tropical storm form in the Indian Ocean season this year, 4B, which is going to make landfall in India fairly soon and could be a rather potent tropical storm, certainly one that could deliver very heavy rainfall to a large amount of people. Satellite imagery right now, and in the corner of the screen down the bottom left you'll see what the National Hurricane Center have marked, an area of interest there that's blowing up convection. It's sort of like a half a tropical storm, I suppose. It's sort of got that structure, but it's struggling, as you can quite clearly see. It's got a little bit of rotation. You could perhaps mark out what might be a center forming just along the western coast of the Yucatan Peninsula into the Bay of Campeche. So certainly something to monitor, but model support is absolutely not there at the moment, which is why main reason why we've not marked anything. Here's a close-up of the Indian Ocean storm. Hasn't been given a name yet by the Indian Meteorological Department. The JTWC designation, the numerical designation, those of you who are familiar, is 4B. B standing for Bay of Bengal, and you can see there's some rain rates associated with that storm as well. Quite a lot towards the southwestern side along the east coast of India there, places like the province of Odisha and into West Bengal as well, receiving significant amounts of rain this morning, generally near the coastal areas. Western Pacific also getting large amounts of rain in parts of the Philippines there, as you can see, and you can probably make out three different disturbances. One is in the Philippine Sea, that's the one we've given 30%, and some clouds off to its northeast is the one that we've given a lower chance for. And here is another look at the Indian Ocean right now, and once again you can see that 4B is dominating proceedings there, with not much else active right now. And in the southern hemisphere you can take a look at what's going on in the Australian region, which the answer is not very much. Frontal system in New Zealand, and actually when you look at it there, we glossed over before, the edge of a tropical system in the South Indian Ocean once again as well, but I highly doubt that's going to do anything. So, sea surface temperatures still looking decent and climbing still in the Eastern Pacific. Yvette is well outside of that area. 30 degrees lingering along the coast of Mexico in quite a few areas. The southern part of the Gulf of Mexico there, an important area that we're watching right now, around 30 degrees Celsius. A little bit cooler on the eastern part of that. But the Gulf in general, 30 degrees, quite commonplace. But look at the western Atlantic, very warm temperatures out at sea, but a little bit cooler than you'd expect along the eastern seaboard of the United States, out to about 50 miles. Here's the Indian Ocean. So that storm was forming right over some 30 degrees Celsius waters, the warmest little pocket of the North Indian Ocean. And in the Western Pacific, when we're watching those other systems, they've got 30 degrees Celsius waters over an enormous area to play about with, extending all the way up to the coast of Japan. In the East China Sea as well, quite a bit above average along the Chinese coast, although a cool pocket right next to it. Here is the sea surface temperature anomaly, the yellows and reds, that's above average, the blues below average, La Nina still quite clear to see. The Atlantic looking generally a bit above average, but not by that much. It's the extratropical zones, the higher latitudes, that are really doing it right now in terms of anomaly. Oceanic heat content is still through the roof and still climbing in the Caribbean Sea. If storms end up in that area, it's going to be open season. In the Western Pacific, a massive area still once again, South China Sea not so much, and in the Eastern Pacific it is climbing a little bit further along the coast of Mexico. It's been struggling all year so far. So let's look at some computer models, and you can see here the Western Pacific, a couple of systems trying their best. Obviously the one that we've marked as 30% there, rather broad system, tries to intensify near the Philippines but ultimately fails according to that model run. Look further towards the east now, northeastwards, you might see that other system try to rotate. There it is, I think. But once again, it's quite difficult to track, which quite clearly means that the chances of it forming are lower. Here's the Indian Ocean. GFS looks like it overdid the starting point of that storm there. It already has it near hurricane status, but I highly doubt that being the case. And then it continues inland as a land depression and could still produce tropical storm force winds over central India. And that's an area that we're particularly concerned about for rainfall as well. Just watch this scene again. Green areas there depicting tropical storm force winds or gale force winds. There it is again in central India. Not familiar with those central provinces, unfortunately, but you get the idea when you look at that. And looking at the precipitation charts, that's pretty much in line with what we saw in the wind charts. Any red zones you see here constitute 250 millimeters of rain or higher, and then you get a little bit of pink areas there as well, which is denoting 15 inches or higher, which is about I think it's, I'm trying to think what it is, 350, 400 millimeters of rain. 17 inches there, the maximum, so an extremely high amount that could affect millions or even tens of millions of people with serious flooding concerns. When you take a look at values like that, I imagine that is just goes without saying. Longer range, day 5 through day 10, GFS throws up an Eastern Pacific storm that doesn't get up to much, but still an interesting development in what would be a continuation of an above average season so far. Eastern Pacific is batting at 130% above average so far in terms of ACE, to compare with the Atlantic right now, which is only at 16% of what you would usually expect for this time of year. Western Pacific also really struggling at just 23% so far. So let's take a look if it has anything up its sleeve in the longer range, day 5 to 10. A little system there moving through the Japanese islands, and then out from the real central part of the Pacific there, a massive system decides it wants to form towards the end of that 10-day period and become a huge typhoon. GFS has been up to this for quite a while, so I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but the GFS has been consistent with trying to get this to happen, but it has been kicking the can down the road a little bit. Well, that's the serious stuff done. You can take a look at our merch store, scan the barcode there, and it will take you straight there with all of our merch products, and you can request individual or full season storm animations. It's also the home of the Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt. So into the silly range of the models, well, we look at the Atlantic. Long range here, 30th of August, a tropical storm forms, and then as we enter September, becomes a hurricane. So that would be a big change to what we've seen so far, and there it is, moving off towards the northwest. Who am I to say that can't happen? It definitely can. Whether it will or not is a big question mark considering it's extremely far out in terms of range, but it is exactly the kind of thing we would expect to see coming into the first week of September. The Eastern Pacific, let's take a look at what happens here as well. During that same time period, this is day 10 through day 16. Not much happens until the 1st of September there, when an enormous tropical storm forms and becomes a hurricane eventually. So 2 simultaneous hurricanes in both basins there as we enter September, if that was to occur. Once again, very plausible, but that doesn't mean it's likely at this stage yet. Just that this kind of stuff has happened before, absolutely. Western Pacific, what happens to the enormous typhoon? Well, it gets stronger, category 4 there, and then it's huge as it grows and then gets squashed a little bit laterally, and then starts to become extratropical, moving off towards the northeast. So it doesn't really affect Japan that much in terms of direct impacts, but if that did happen, I imagine there'd be a lot of high waves and dangerous rip current conditions. But that is pure speculation. It is nearly 2 weeks out. Let's go back in time then on this day, on August 19th, 1994. Beautiful image there of Typhoon Fred near its peak as a category 4. We also had Hurricane Chris, which was a category 1 in the Atlantic, which probably isn't very well remembered. It remained mainly out to sea. And Tropical Storm John in its early stages there, a storm that lasted for a whole month. Formed first in the Eastern Pacific, it was about to start its rapid intensification phase on this day. 28 years ago now, that's a long time. So let's take a look at what's next this year. It's Danielle in the Atlantic, Javier is next in the Eastern Pacific, and in the Central Pacific we're still waiting for Hone. My voice cracked at the mere mention of it. In the Western Pacific, next up is Ma-on, and in the North Indian Ocean, keep your eyes peeled, this one could be named Sitrang, but we'll have to wait and see what the IMD do. And in the Southern Hemisphere, the next name on the Australian naming list is Dargan, the Southwest Indian Ocean. Next up is Ashley, and in the South Pacific, we'll be looking out for Harley. That's all for tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.